In Sigil, there are major factions that control most of the politics and economy in the city, but there are countless lesser factions which are like-minded individuals who form organizations to represent their own interests, or just associated with like-minded individuals. One of these is the Gymnasium. It is composed of gladiators who fight in the arena, philosophers who debate various philosophies, along with artists and sculptors. The group is composed heavily of individuals who have come from the plane of Olympus, which is also called Arvandor in Elvish. The Olympians are subjects to the gods of Mount Olympus and live in a pastoral realm of well-cultivated fields, groves of olives, and lush forests. The members of the Gymnasium are often human, but are also satyrs, centaurs, nymphs, and other fey creatures. Also among them are occasional minotaurs, harpies, and Medusa. The rarest and most notable members are the demigods, descendants of the Olympian gods. While it has been many centuries since a true child of the gods appeared, the grandchildren and great-grandchildren still carry the spark of divine power and are capable of great deeds. Hi everyone, and welcome to an epic episode of
The Dungeon Crashers.
I'm Guy.
And I'm Zapeel. Before we get started, please like our video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications so to not miss any of our exciting D&D content. Today we are creating a hero inspired by the demigods of Greek mythology. While Dungeons & Dragons doesn't have a demigod lineage, there are Aasimars which are descended from celestial beings, and that will work perfectly well for what we are trying to accomplish. The gods of Olympus aren't heavily featured in 5th edition, but they do exist. The plane of Arborea was called the Arboreal Plane of Olympus in older editions and was home of Mount Olympus and the gods who dwelled there. Most of these gods dwell on the first plane of Arborea that they call Olympus, but it is also called Arvandor by the Elvish deities who also make their home there. It is the plane of chaotic good emotions, both positive and negative, run high there. Love seems deeper and more meaningful, but jealousy is equally powerful and can lead both people and gods to terrible acts. The gods are as affected by the nature of the plane as anyone else and are prone to wild romance with mortals, bitter rivalry, jealousy, and anger. Worshippers of the gods often seek to appease them and avoid their wrath rather than asking them for favors. Our hero is a result of one such divine romance gone wrong. Our hero is an Aasimar. They are medium or small size depending on the race of their mortal ancestor. In either case, they have a walking speed of 30 feet, they have a dark vision out to 60 feet, and they also know the light cantrip, and charisma is the casting ability for it. They have celestial resistance, giving them resistance to radiant and necrotic damage. Aasimar have Healing Hands ability. Once per long rest, they can touch a creature and roll a number of d4s equal to their proficiency modifier and heal the creature that amount. They also gain the Celestial Revelation at 3rd level, which allows them to manifest their celestial heritage. This can take one of 3 forms, and we will talk about them when they get to 3rd level. Aasimars begin play knowing common and one language of their choice, and our hero speaks Sylvan, which is the language of fey creatures. We are continuing our exploration of the Planescape setting, and will be using the Planar Philosopher background. The background lists the several major factions of Sigil, and players choose one when they take the background. There is also the option to choose a faction other than the main ones, and that is what we will be doing. Planar Philosopher gets proficiency in the Arcana skill and a skill associated with their faction. Since we are creating our own based on Greek mythology, it gives either animal handling or proficiency with land or naval vehicles. We are choosing land vehicles. Our hero is going to be a charioteer and gladiator. They also have a portal key among their possessions, and our hero has the key that will take him to Olympus. The background also gives the planar Scion feat. When choosing the feat, the player chooses a plane to draw power from, and he chooses Olympus. It is a chaotic good plane, and he chooses either chaos or good as the source of his power, and he chooses good. This gives him resistance to radiant damage, which he already has as an Aasimar, and it gives him Sacred Flame cantrip, and he chooses charisma for the casting ability. We are using the version of Aasimar from Monsters of the Multiverse, and they get the ability score increase common in the book, which are 3+1 bonuses that you can put anywhere you want, but no more than 2 on the same ability. Using the point buy, we put a 15 on strength, making it 16 with 1 bonus point. We put a 13 on dexterity, making it 14 with the next bonus point. We put 12 on Constitution, then we put a 10 on both Intelligence and Wisdom. He doesn't really need them, but we don't want negatives. And last, we put a 13 on Charisma, making it 14 with the last bonus point. Ability scores are going to be spread thin with this character, and we would love more Constitution, but don't have the points for it. Our goal is to make him an excellent physical specimen with the points we have available. However, he also needs Charisma, and we are going to be taking a few feats, so we aren't going to have really high ability scores.
Unlike his father Zeus, the sun god Apollo is not widely known for affairs with mortal women, but there have been a few. One of these was our hero's grandmother. She was an oracle of great notoriety and drew the attention of Apollo, who is the god of prophecy. The two had a brief but passionate romance, which resulted in the birth of our hero's mother. Like other children of the gods, his mother was blessed with divine power. She not only inherited the power of prophecy, but was a noted poet and sorceress as well. All went well for her, and she achieved great fame until some bards began comparing her beauty to the goddess Aphrodite. The goddess was overcome with jealousy and began plotting against the child of Apollo, but could not act openly as the sun god was protective of his child. So the love goddess sent her own son, Eros, to cause the maiden to fall in love with a cruel king. Our hero's mother pursued the romance, and the king, seeing that the maiden was beautiful and of divine heritage, readily agreed to marry her. At first things went well enough, but Aphrodite once again sent Eros, this time to cause the king to fall in love with another woman. The king, being cruel, immediately set out to be rid of his wife so that he could marry his new love. He surely would have succeeded, but Apollo sent a prophecy to the young woman, warning her of danger, and she fled into the forest, where she was taken in by a family of centaurs who kept her safe and hidden. In time, the young woman discovered she was pregnant and eventually gave birth to a son by her cruel husband. The centaurs protected her and her child, but the evil king never gave up his quest to be rid of his wife, and sent his best warriors to seek her out and kill her. When the babe was little over a year old, the soldiers located the centaurs' camp and attacked. The centaurs fought well, but were outnumbered. Not wanting any more to die for her, and fearing for her child, our hero's mother surrendered herself to the troops, but not before sending a young centaur away to hide her son. The young woman was taken away by the soldiers. The centaurs, believing she would be executed and wanting to protect the child, had the young centaur who had taken the child into hiding continue guarding the babe by taking it out of Olympus and into the city of Sigil through a planar portal. Our hero begins play as a first-level bard, having inherited his mother's skill with poetry. He chooses 3 skills from the bard list and takes athletics, persuasion, and performance. He was raised in the gymnasium and was trained as a gladiator, learning not only arts of combat, but also how to entertain and inspire the crowd. He is proficient with simple weapons, long swords, rapiers, short swords, and hand crossbows, light armor, and charisma and dexterity saves. He fights with a spear and short sword, and is also skilled with a short bow. His grandfather Apollo is also the god of archery, and our hero comes to love the bow. His specialty is fighting from a chariot, either alone using a spear or as part of a team where he would fight with his bow. He has bardic inspiration, which gives him a number of inspiration dice equal to his charisma modifier. He can use a bonus action to give one of these dice to an ally, and during the next 10 minutes that ally can spin the dice and add it to a d20 roll. The dice is a d6 and increases in size as he gains bard levels, and he regains all expended dice when he finishes a long rest. He also gets spellcasting, gaining 2 first-level spell slots and learning 2 cantrips and 4 first-level spells from the bard list. He chooses Vicious Mockery and Friends for the cantrips. For the spells, he takes Healing Word, as his ancestor Apollo is also a god of medicine, Silvery Barbs, because Apollo is a god of prophecy, Color Spray, because Apollo is a god of the sun, and Command, as Apollo is a god of justice. He is proficient with 3 musical instruments and plays the lyre and kitara. Both are played by Apollo, and he also learns the drum, which we will often play before the start of a battle. He can use an instrument as a spellcasting focus for his bard spells, and he is also a ritual caster, and can cast any spells he has with the ritual tag without using a spell slot if he extends the casting time to 10 minutes. At second level, he becomes a second-level bard, gaining Jack of all trades, letting him add half his proficiency modifier to any ability check that doesn't already include his proficiency modifier. This includes initiative, making him very quick in combat. He also gains Song of Rest. When allies spend a hit dice to regain hit points on a short rest, he can perform to let them gain an additional d6 hit points. He also gains a first level spell slot and can learn a spell of first level, and he chooses Dissonant Whispers. This deals psychic damage and causes the target to use its reaction to move away, which will provoke an attack of opportunity. At third level, he becomes a third level bard and chooses the college, and he joins the College of Swords. He has been trained as a gladiator and knows how to entertain through combat. He gains proficiency with medium armor and a scimitar, and he begins wearing medium armor, ultimately wearing half-plate, which is what we consider Roman legionnaire armor to be. He also gains a fighting style, which can be dueling or two-weapon fighting, and he chooses dueling, giving him +2 when wielding a one-handed weapon and not wielding a weapon in the other hand. He can also use a melee weapon as a focus for his bard spells. He also learns to perform blade flourishes. Once per turn, when taking the attack action, he can spend a use of his bardic inspiration and add the amount rolled to the damage of the attack, and he can also add an additional effect, which can be defensive flourish, which lets him add the number rolled on the inspiration dice to his armor class until the start of his next turn. Mobile flourish, which lets him push the target 5 feet plus a number of feet equal to the roll on the inspiration dice, and then he uses his reaction to move up to his walking speed to a space within 5 feet of the target. Or he can use a slashing flourish, which lets him deal damage equal to the roll of the inspiration dice to a creature within 5 feet of the target. He also gains a 4th first-level spell slot and 2 second-level spell slots, and can learn another spell that can be second level, and he learns Hold Person. He can also retrain a spell, and he trades Command for Suggestion. He gains expertise in 2 skills, and he chooses Athletics to perform heroic feats of strength and compete in contests such as the high jump or throwing the discus, and Persuasion to increase his appeal among his fans. As an Aasimar, he gains the power of Radiant Consumption. Once per long rest, he can use a bonus action to transform himself for 1 minute, during which time he manifests some of the power of Apollo. Searing light emits from his eyes and mouth, shedding bright light for 10 feet and dim light for another 10 feet. At the end of each of his turns, each creature within 10 feet of him takes radiant damage equal to his proficiency modifier, and once on each of his turns, he can deal extra damage with a spell or attack equal to his proficiency modifier. At 4th level, he becomes a 4th level bard, gaining an ability score improvement of feat, and he takes the Polearm Master feat, which gives him a few abilities. When a creature enters his reach, he can make an opportunity attack against it with a polearm, and when taking the attack action with a polearm, he can make a bonus action attack with the haft of the polearm, dealing 1d4 bludgeoning damage. He gains a 3rd second-level spell slot and can learn a spell of up to 2nd level, and can learn another cantrip from the bard list. For the spell, he chooses Aid, and for the cantrip, he takes Prestidigitation, letting him create flashy effects to enhance his performances. At 5th level, he becomes a 5th level bard. His bardic inspiration dice become d8s, and he gains Font of Inspiration, letting him regain his spend inspiration dice on a short rest. Both of these will increase his combat performance, making his blade flourishes stronger, and letting him use them more freely. He gains 2 3rd-level spell slots and can learn a spell up to 3rd level, and he learns Hypnotic Pattern. This is a powerful spell that can incapacitate and immobilize multiple creatures, letting him fight them one at a time. The spell ends on a creature if it takes damage, or another creature uses an action to shake it out of its stupor. At 6th level, he becomes a 6th level bard. From College of Swords, he gains extra attack. When he takes the attack action, he can make 2 attacks instead of 1, and he also gains Counter Charm, letting him use an action to give friendly creatures within 30 feet advantage on saving throws to avoid being frightened or charmed. He learns another spell that can be 3rd level, and he chooses Mass Healing Word.
Our hero grew up in the gymnasium. The young centaur who brought him to safety stayed by his side and helped with his training in swordplay and archery. He also received training from the many warriors and gladiators who were also members of the gymnasium. He grew up tall, strong, and handsome, and when he fought his first battle in the arena, he was an instant favorite with the crowd. Years went by, and his skill and fame grew. He became a celebrity within the city, and word of his exploits extended to other planes as well, reaching the ears of his grandfather, the sun god Apollo. The god had not been aware he had a grandchild, but when word reached him of a demigod wielding the power of the sun in the arenas of Sigil, he investigated. He also investigated the fate of his daughter and found that she had still lived. He had believed that she had been killed by marauders in the wilderness and had mourned her briefly, but being a god, had moved on to other matters. But now he knew she lived and was being kept in the dungeons of her husband, who had faked her death and locked her away. Apollo was enraged, but knew that another god had to have a hand in this, and did not want to start a conflict on Mount Olympus. So instead he sent a vision to his grandchild, informing him of his mother's fate, and asking the boy to return to Aboria and free his mother. He also sent the boy magical gifts, a spear cast from a sunbeam and a shield enchanted to turn both blades and arrows away. Our hero, receiving this vision and the gifts, vowed an oath to his grandfather that he would save his mother and bring the wicked king to justice. At 7th level, he becomes a 1st level paladin. He gains proficiency with martial weapons and shields. By this level, he should have half plate, and with the shield gives him a stronger armor class. He can also upgrade his short bow to a long bow. As he uses a weapon and a shield, he can't quickly switch from melee to archery, and will frequently use his cantrips for ranged attacks. But he carries his longbow for encounters that begin with significant range to make it worth using. And it can also be an excellent weapon to fire from his chariot. He gains Divine Sense. As a bonus action, he can detect any fiend, celestial, or undead within 60 feet that isn't behind total cover. This ability has some serious limitations. In most cases, unless the being is invisible and isn't behind total cover, you are going to see it anyway. And if it is invisible, this will let you know it's there, but won't negate the benefits it gains from being invisible. This ability also lets you detect consecrated or desecrated areas, which is more useful. He can use this ability a number of times per long rest, equal to his charisma modifier +1, which is probably more than you will ever need. He also gets Lay on Hands, which is a pool of healing equal to 5 times his paladin level. He can use an action to touch a creature, including himself, and spend any number of these points to heal the creature that many hit points. He can also spend 5 of those points as a part of the same action to cure 1 poison or disease affecting the creature. This is pretty good. Healing is always good, and having an effective means to cure poison is very nice. At 8th level, he becomes a 2nd level paladin and gains a fighting style. He already has dueling, so he takes the defense style, giving him +1 to armor class when wearing armor. This will give him an armor class of 20 without magic. This is as good as plate mail with better mobility. We started with Bard and invested in dexterity for a few reasons. We wanted the extra skills from Bard and wanted the style of using Roman armor, and we wanted him to be able to use a bow well. All of these are style choices. For a different character, you could start with a paladin and get heavy armor proficiency, letting you dump dexterity. The advantage of doing it this way is the better mobility and the good dexterity and jack of all trades. He will also have excellent initiative, and he has a good social character outside of combat, which is also important. He also gets spellcasting. As a multi-class caster, he has spell slots will be different than a single-class bard or paladin, and you will be using the table on page 164 and 165 of the player's handbook. This will give him a 4th level spell slot, but he has no 4th level spells as a bard and can only prepare 1st level spells as a paladin, so he'll be using his 4th level slot for upcasting lower level spells. A paladin is a prepared caster and can prepare a number of spells equal to half his paladin level rounded down, with a minimum of 1, plus his charisma modifier, so 3 for now. And he prepares Divine Favor, allowing him to add a d4 radiant damage to all his attacks for up to a minute, depending on concentration. He also prepares Shield of Faith, which also uses concentration and can add 2 to his armor class for situations where he prefers defense to offense. And he prepares Command, since it is a useful spell and he no longer has it as a bard. Paladins can use Divine Focus for his paladin spells, which could be attached to his weapon or shield, and since he can also use his weapon as a focus for his bard spells, he will be able to cast most of his spells without needing the Warcaster feat. There are some spells that require somatic components, but not material components, and those will require him to sheath his sword. Instead of casting spells, he can use his spell slots for Divine Smite. When he hits with a melee weapon attack, he can spend a spell slot and add 1d8 radiant damage, plus another 1d8 per level of the spell slot. He can spend any spell slot of up to 5th level, and he currently has a 4th level spell slot, so he can add a lot of damage. At 9th level, he becomes a 3rd level paladin and takes an oath, and he chooses Oath of Glory, swearing to become the best warrior he can be and do great deeds. He also gains a use of Channel Divinity and 2 ways to use it. The first is Peerless Athlete. He can spend his Channel Divinity to increase his athletic ability. He gains advantage on athletics and acrobatic checks. He can push, lift, drag, and carry twice as much weight, and the distance of his long and high jumps increase by 10 feet. He can instead spend it to make an inspiring strike. When he hits an opponent, he can spend his channel divinity to roll 2d8 and add his paladin level, and then distribute that number of temporary hit points among friendly creatures he can see within 30 feet. His use of channel divinity recovers on a short rest, so use it often. He also gains oath spells at each spell level that are always prepared and don't count against the number of spells he can prepare. The first level spells he gains are Guiding Bolt and Heroism. Guiding Bolt is an excellent ranged attack spell, and it's also appropriate for descendants of Apollo to be blasting enemies with rays of light. There's also an optional ability that can let him use the channel divinity to restore a spell slot of a level no higher than half his proficiency modifier. This can be useful if he has a tough fight and needs one more smite to finish it off. His divine health also makes him immune to disease. At 10th level, he becomes a 4th level paladin, getting ability score improvement or a feat, and he takes the Righteous Heriter feat from the Planescape setting. It lets him increase his charisma to 15, and it gives him the ability to soothe pain. When a creature within 30 feet of him takes damage, he can use his reaction to reduce the damage by 1d10 plus his proficiency modifier. He can use this ability a number of times per day equal to his proficiency modifier. He also gains a second 4th level spell slot and can prepare an additional 1st level paladin spell and prepares Cure Wounds to supplement his Lay on Hands. At 11th level, he becomes a 5th level paladin and would gain extra attack, but already has that, so he doesn't get it again. He can also prepare 2nd level spells. Those spells he gains are Enhanced Ability and Magic Weapon. Enhanced Ability has some interesting uses. It lasts for an hour but requires concentration. Cat's Grace gives him an advantage on dexterity checks and protects him from falling damage. The advantage would apply to initiative, which is also nice. Bolus Strength double his carrying capacity, which combined with his channel divinity would allow for some Herculean feats of strength, and Eagle Splendor is amazing in social situations. He doesn't have additional spell prepared, but he stops preparing Cure Wounds and begins preparing Prayer of Healing. It is only useful out of combat, but is excellent to heal after a battle. At 12th level, he becomes a 6th level paladin and gets Aura of Protection, allowing him and his allies within 10 feet to add his charisma modifier to all their saving throws. This is an amazing ability, making him very resilient. He gains a 5th level spell slot and can prepare another paladin spell of up to 2nd level, and he prepares Lesser Restoration to further reflect being descended from the god of medicine.
Our hero is determined to fill his oath and decides to return to Olympus and rescue his mother and slay the king who holds her prisoner. His friend and mentor, the centaur who has protected him since he was a child, insists on accompanying him, as does his close friend, a satyr who is both a warrior and philosopher, who often drives his chariot in battle, and a warrior woman sworn to Artemis, who also comes to stand at his side. The champions prepare a chariot loaded with supplies and extra arrows and pass through the portal into Olympus. The atmosphere of the plain strikes them immediately. Colors seem more vibrant, words sound more melodious, and their emotions become more passionate. Their bonds of friendship strengthen, and their desire for revenge grows deeper, and they become more impulsive and reckless. Knowing that they lack the strength to take on a king's army, they begin planning to add to their power. Thinking that if this king is as wicked as he seems, he must have enemies and unhappy subjects, the band of heroes head to the nearest village to gather information. The village is wonderful, with quiet streets and beautiful architecture. It seems a paradise. They enter a small tavern and smell delicious food being prepared. He thinks that perhaps they were mistaken and the king treated his subjects well. They ask a young serving girl if they could get food and wine. The girl agreed and quickly brought them a meal. She seemed surprised when our hero gave her a gold piece in payment and told him that she couldn't change such a large sum. Our hero told her that there was no need and to keep the remainder, and handed her another, asking for lodgings for the night. The girl nearly fainted, but composed herself and told them that there were plenty of rooms available. After talking to her for a time, the heroes discovered that there were few travelers that came through the village, only the king's soldiers who took what they wanted and never paid. Our hero used his charm on the girl and gently questioned her, finding that the people were unhappy with the ruler, whose taxes were high and soldiers were cruel and undisciplined. He thought perhaps he was in the right place after all, and asked the girl who the leader of the village was and how to go about meeting him. At 13th level, he becomes a 7th level paladin, gaining Aura of Alacrity. His movement speed increases by 10 feet, and any ally that starts their turn within 5 feet of him have their movement speed increased by 10 feet until the end of their turn. This ability is really nice but hard to set up. If he moves first in initiative, he will need to end up in a position where he has allies within 5 feet, and if he doesn't go first in initiative, allies that aren't within 5 feet of him won't benefit. That being said, the flat increase in his own speed is good by itself, and if his companions benefit from it as well, that's an added bonus. At 14th level, he gains 8th level Paladin, getting an ability score improvement or feat, and he's going to take the Fey Touch feat. His closest companions are Fey, and their influence has given him certain abilities. He increases his Charisma to 16. He gains the Misty Step spell and can cast it once per day without using a spell slot. He also gains a first level Divination or Enchantment spell that he can also cast once per day without using a spell slot, and he takes Hex from the Warlock list. This is generally stronger than using Divine Favor, although it does limit him to fighting one target at a time. He can stop preparing Divine Favor and prepare a different spell, or keep Divine Favor prepared for situations when he has to fight multiple enemies. Hex also has the advantage of applying to spell attacks as well as his melee attacks. It also gives the target disadvantage on ability checks of the caster's choice. Giving an enemy disadvantage on strength checks combined with his expertise in athletics will make him very effective with shoves and grapples against that enemy. He gains a second 5th level spell slot, and since he has gained an even Paladin level and increased his Charisma, he can prepare 2 more Paladin spells to go up to 2nd level. Gentle Repose is always good to have, and Branding Smite can be very useful if the party is facing invisible enemies. At 15th level, he becomes a 7th level Bard. He gains a 6th level spell slot and can learn the Bard spell up to 4th level, and he learns Confusion. It uses his concentration, so competes with other things he wants to cast, but against a powerful foe it can quickly turn the battle in his party's favor. At 16th level, he becomes an 8th level Bard, getting an ability score improvement or feat, and he takes the Tough feat. Increasing his Constitution to 14 is another option, but he already has his Aura of Protection to help with Constitution saves, so getting more hit points is probably the better option. He also can learn another Bard spell of up to 4th level, and he learns Charm Monster. This is another spell that can quickly end combats, but it is most effective outside of combat when he needs the assistance of someone who he can't persuade with his natural charm.
The village elder confirmed the hero's suspicion that there was a great deal of discontent within the small kingdom. The common folk were oppressed, but had little ability to oppose the evil king and his minions. His soldiers were cruel and poorly disciplined, but were well armed, and the king had more deadly servants. A pack of harpies were kept under the king's control, and he would send them to destroy any rebels. The party considered their options. Our hero instructed the satyr to work with the villagers to try and raise a rebellion, while the rest of them set out to deal with the harpies. The village elder told them that the foul creatures dwelt in the hill to the north, and only came forth when the king called for them. They kept a number of men as thralls who guarded their lair. The leader of the harpies was said to be a powerful enchantress. The adventurers spent several days seeking the harpies' lair. Outside the cave in the hills stood a group of men carrying shields and spears. They wore no armor and didn't carry themselves as warriors, but there were dozens of them, so still a force to be concerned about. The party moved stealthily into position and prepared their bows. All 3 were excellent archers and dropped many of the enemies before they had to engage in melee combat. Once the battle turned into hand-to-hand combat, the companions stood side by side and with shield and spear, save for the centaur who preferred a long lance. The men fell quickly, but not without inflicting injury to the heroes. Catching their breath, the heroes used magic to tend to their wounds and made their way into the cave where the harpies dwelt. The cave was filled with filth and skank of decay. The bird women circled above, but instead of attacking, they began singing a song to enthrall the adventurers. Our hero began singing his own song, a counter-charm, to oppose the harpies' control. His Amazonian friend and the centaur resisted the harpies' charm and began firing the enemy with their bows. One of the harpies stood on a ledge instead of flying into battle and spoke a word of power. Pain filled the companions' minds, clouding their thoughts and dulling their aim. Our hero acted quickly, casting a spell to enhance his strength. He vaulted up the wall of the cave to reach the harpy enchantress and laid into her with his spear. The harpy responded, speaking words of power, but our hero's aura of protection shielded him from the magics. With a great leap, he brought his sword down on the harpy queen, ending her life mid-spell. He turned to rejoin the fight, but his companions had slain the last of the harpies. Here is where we have to make a choice. 3 more levels of Paladin will get improved Divine Smite, which is a powerful ability, but more levels of Bard will get stronger casting, including magical secrets. Either way, it will make for a strong character, but we believe there is more value in continuing as Bard. At 17th level, he becomes a 9th level Bard. His Song of Rest improves to a D8, and he gains a 7th level spell slot. He can also learn another Bard spell that can be a 5th level, and he learns Hold Monster, which is another powerful way to end a battle quickly. At 18th level, he becomes a 10th level Bard. His Inspiration dice increase to a D10, making his flourishes very strong. He gains expertise in 2 more skills. Since Performance and Arcana are his only remaining skills, he gains expertise in both. He also learns Magical Secrets, which are 2 spells of up to 5th level from any class list. For the first, he chooses Destructive Wave from the Paladin list. It is one of the strongest area of effect damaging spells in the game, dealing large damage with a good area of effect, possibly knocking enemies prone and allowing him to choose which creatures are affected. It has the added bonus of also looking cool. He strikes his weapon against the ground and blasts enemies with an explosion of light and sound. For the second, he takes Swift Quiver. It requires concentration and creates a quiver of magical arrows, and during the duration, he can fire 2 arrows from the bow as a bonus action. This will make him an excellent archer and be appropriate for the descendant of the god of archery. We haven't invested a lot into archery, but still want him to be skilled in it, and this will help.
Returning to the village, they found that the satyr had not been idle. He had gathered a force of heroes from surrounding communities, young warriors who refused service with the evil king, gladiators seeking their freedom, and common folk willing to take up arms to overthrow their evil ruler. Other beings of Olympus also came to join the rebellion. Centaurs and satyrs came in from the wild to join the cause, and with them came a minotaur, who despite being cursed by the gods, had a kind heart and no love for the king's soldiers. With the king's harpies destroyed and a force of good troops at his back, our hero gave a rousing speech and led his forces off to battle. In the sky above, the rays of the afternoon sun flashed off of shields and spear points, creating a grand display that told our hero that his grandfather, the sun god Apollo, blessed their undertaking. At 19th level, he becomes an 11th level Bard. He gains an 8th level spell slot and can learn a spell of up to 6th level, and he chooses Mass Suggestion, giving him a powerful way to exert his influence over others. And it has the advantage of not requiring concentration and having extended duration when casting a higher level spell slot. And at 20th level, he becomes a 12th level Bard and gains an ability score improvement or feat, and he increases his Charisma to 18. Strength or Constitution would also be good choices, but Charisma not only empowers his spellcasting, it increases the strength of his aura of protection and his persuasion and performance skills. Strength would increase his attacks and damage a little, which is nearly as important. Constitution would give him some much-needed hit points, but wouldn't offer much more than that. He doesn't learn any additional spells here, but he can retrain a spell and might want to trade one of his lower-level spells for Hero's Feast to strengthen his allies before a battle. This was a fun character to make. We tried to capture the spirit of demigods like Perseus and Heracles, and tell the type of story that fit the tone of Greek mythology. We hope you enjoyed this character, and will tell us about it in the comments below, along with any suggestions, questions, or build ideas. And we hope you join us next time when we continue exploring the Outlands with a former resident of the Abyss, a thrall of Jubilex. Until next time, cheers!